he may have to work on his shooting. I mean, as you can see, missing 10 of 15 shots, including 10 three-pointers. This was a guy who shot some three-pointers, but he also drove to the basket. I don't know where that was in Summer League. So, whether either he was instructed to work on his shooting in this Summer League debut, and clearly he needs a lot more work, or he just was in the sense that, hey, I can shoot threes and be fine. Yeah, you still gotta have an inside game as well, or else you're gonna be figured out very easily. And his defense is not that great, as we saw in that NCAA tournament game against Kentucky, where De'Aaron Fox, who torched him, if that's what we're gonna see defensively from Lonzo, you got to really improve offensively to get better and to be competitive in this league, because you'll be chewed right up. They're number 2 picks in this league all the time that have a lot of expectations on them, and quite frankly, they just don't pan out. So, moving on, we're going to talk about some NFL players here. And this time of the year, there's not a lot of highlights with the NFL, just because it's a dead season. You have everyone returning to camp fairly shortly, and the NFL season's right around the corner. A month away from preseason, we're all excited, blah, 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 and no NFL news, right? Or so we thought. You have some NFL players complaining about how NBA players make so much money. Why, how are their contracts, guaranteed, and how blah blah blah. You had Sammy Watkins, who from the Buffalo Bills, or the wideout, who voiced his opinion on this the ridiculous contracts NBA players make. Look, if anyone's going to be voicing out, I get it. But I'm sorry, even as a Bills fan, it cannot be Sammy Watkins of all people. Just because, look, this is a guy who's always injured and can't stay healthy on the field. We just got to get you on the field, Sammy. Come on. And then start complaining, because you're vastly overpaid for what your production is. So I don't know why you have a voice in this at all. Much respect to you regardless. And then TJ Ward of the Broncos, the safety, voicing out his opinions on social media on these contracts with these free agents. And it reminded me that, hey, just because you're an athlete, you're not necessarily the smartest cookie. And I'm not saying that all athletes are like this. I know athletes that are ridiculously smart. You have some players in the NFL who are very smart and could be well off in other professions. But you also have some players who, quite frankly, don't have it all together up in the head. And let me give you some basic math. And to the average consumer who's, again, even average people on social media are complaining about this. It comes down to just basic math, guys. That's it. Basic math. So, what I'm going to do here, I am going to go with the NFL. In the NFL, for this upcoming season, it's $167 million for the salary cap. And just to keep in mind, it's a hard salary cap. Now, what does that mean? That means that you are not allowed to go over that under any circumstance, which is why people are, with these contracts in the NFL, they're always restructured about 3 to 4 years in. Always. You sign these 5-year, $100 million deals, I'd say maybe you see 60 or 70% of that if you're the best of the best. But oftentimes, you're restructuring that contract constantly. What's guaranteed, what's fully guaranteed, blah, 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 all these technical things. And, yeah, it just becomes a lot. So, but again, $167 million, you cannot go over that amount. On an NFL roster, you have 53 players, right? 53 is the final roster you're allowed to have on the active roster for the season. You divide that leaves you with a grand total of $3,150,943, and we'll round it up, 40 cents. So about $3.1 million per player. Now, as we know, it is not distributed evenly like that. You have players who are highly valued, a little bit more than the average player. Obviously, the quarterback, you start from there. As we know, in the NFL, you are not going anywhere without a QB, which is why you always have to overpay for quarterbacks. One way or another, you're going to have to overpay. then you move to the positions such as getting the defensive ends, players that can get to the quarterback, linebacker, and then you move to specialty positions, whether it be cornerback, wide out, positions that require a little bit more technical skill. And when it's all said and done, if under the cap, $167 million is the goal, and you are not allowed to go over that. So let's again. $3.1 million for those for NFL average salary per player. Now let's move over to the NBA. For the 2017-2018 season, it is projected that it's going to be $99 million as a soft salary cap. Now, what is a soft salary cap? That is a difference. You are allowed to go over that, and then at $113 million, you're going into what's called the luxury tax bracket. Which means if you're at that amount, if you hit over $113 million, you're going to start paying taxes on, you're going to have to start paying the league over the difference between what let's say, you're at the, 130 million for the season in salaries, and the cap's at 99. You're paying about $30 million because you hit that tax at 113. So you're paying about $30 million to the league, the owners are, because they decided to go over that. So 99 is the soft cap, but again, you have all these, and a lot of it has to do with bird rights and being able to re-sign your own players, mid-level exceptions, you name it. All this whole contracts in the NBA are slightly more complicated than NFL contracts. But let's just keep it simple, right? $99 million. Let's just say it's a hard cap for argument's sake. You divide that over 14 players, right? 14 players. Because that's on average what NBA rosters hold. When you divide that amount, you're looking at a little over $7 million. Now, if I'm not mistaken, my math, 7 million, a little bit bigger than 3 million, right? A little bit. Not by a lot, but a little bit. And why is that? Right? How about it's because you have less players to divide it against. That's all. You have less players to divide it against. That's what people don't get. You see these astronomical contracts, and it's because you're dividing it amongst less players. You have players that take the veterans minimum if they want to be on a championship team like the Warriors, or you have players that get the Supermax deal and take up a huge portion of the cap. But at the end of the day, average, you're dividing you're dividing the pie amongst less people. Math was always a subject for me growing up that I was always great at. And forget, I was terrible starting when you added algebra 2, calculus. I was done. Because you add letters in the equation, and I was just awful at it. But basic math, it was easy, right? You had addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. The 4 basics, easy, right? Division for me was always a little bit tough. But when the concept is very simple, if you're dividing the amount over less things, it's going to turn out to be a bigger number. That's it. So why are NBA players making more money on average? Because there are less roster spots in the NFL. You take the 14 roster spots over the 30 teams in the league. That's 420. 420 players. $420. Now let's go to the NFL. 32 teams. You multiply that by 53. 1,696 players. That's about 4 times the amount of NBA players. Or 4 times the amount of football players than there are NBA players. Yeah. You're dividing the pie amongst less people. It really comes down to that, everybody. It's not that hard to think about, but when you see these astronomical contracts, hey, maybe then go play basketball. Then maybe you chose the wrong profession. And it's a harder league to get in just because there's so few spots. You have players who can probably make an NFL roster, but not an NBA roster. There's more likely of a chance that you make the NFL roster than it is an NBA roster. It's just basic math. There's 4 times fewer spots to get in the NBA than there is in the NFL. That's all it is. And I wish NFL players would understand that. On top of that, the last collective bargaining agreement that we had, players wanted less practice time, right? And in order for that to happen, they also had to give up some of the money back to the owners. Because if you don't practice, you don't get paid, right? Fine. With this whole idea, coming out of the head trauma injuries, again, it's a very sensitive subject, and I'm not trying to make it less of a subject. But if players want to practice less, hey, I get it. For the long-term health, that's fine. But if you're not working, you shouldn't get paid. And that's why some of the money shifted back to the owners. And if you want fully guaranteed contracts, hey, let's get a holdout going. Let's get a holdout going and the whole league shut down. We want fully guaranteed contracts like the NBA. We want more piece of the pie. Great. Hold out. But a lot of the players probably aren't going to do that. I don't know what player is gonna ignite this conversation if it comes to the case. Again, Sammy Watkins, T.J. Ward, great players in their own right. They're names of people that we know. But until a name like Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, Tom Brady, they hold out and say, we want fully guaranteed contracts and more money, I don't think that needle's going to move anytime soon. So the NFL Players Association needs to get together if this is really their concern, because even Major League Baseball players make a little bit more money on average than NFL players. Talk to the Players Union. You guys are 1,600 or almost 1,700 players. I'm pretty sure you guys can get together and talk about this and say, hey, is this something that we want to do? Or at least get the big name athletes, the players that have a lot of money that they can potentially make by doing that. But until that happens, we're us and 90% that would love to just make the 3.1 million on average, or even half of that. I'd love to make 1.5 million a year for being like the 53rd player on the roster. 800 is 600,000. I'd be okay with 600,000. I think I could live off that. I could figure out what to do with $600,000 a year. But these players want more money. And I get it. I totally get it. We as people always want to feel that we are compensated for our value in whatever profession. As time goes on, you're looking to get more money. Whatever profession, you're always looking to make more money. You're always looking for ways to make more money. But it comes down to what is the value on the market worth? What is